Steelers fans, I know Nick Herbig's playing great, but that does not mean this team should trade away Alex Highsmith right now. I'll explain why and a lot more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making this your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. More on FanDuel later. All right, Steelers fans, I wanted to address this to lead off the Wednesday show. By the way, welcome to October, Steelers fans. It's bye week, but we still got a lot to discuss here. I am just now getting ready to leave Ireland. We're going to be headed out, so this show's going to be a little bit shorter, but we'll have still content coming your way all throughout the rest of the week leading into the weekend. I should be able to get back into the Steelers facility tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow when I am back, or today when I'm back, whenever. Time's fragile thing right now because I do believe we will get assistant coaches this week as it's the bye week, and this will be our best chance to talk to them. But I wanted to lead off this show talking about Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith because I've seen this notion pushed more and more. I saw it pushed a lot in the offseason, and I was against it then. I'm still against it now. I don't think the Steelers should trade away Alex Highsmith because of Nick Herbig's excellent play in this last game or in the last few games. I think Nick Herbig's taken some great steps, and he's becoming the guy the Steelers hoped he would when they drafted him. But I also think that you got to keep your depth at outside linebacker. And I know Alex Highsmith's been hurt, and that's been frustrating. You haven't been able to see him in action, but you got to remember what he brings to the table when he is fully healthy and what this team needs to be at its best. And to me, they need this outside linebacker position to be pristine, not just with the starters, but they need to have at least some backup ready for when one guy goes down, even if it's just for a game or two. If a guy goes down for a long term, we've seen the impact of that, right? How many times in the last few seasons have you seen TJ Watt go down and this team didn't have an answer? Well, now they do, but we also see they not only have an answer for when TJ Watt goes down, but when Alex Highsmith goes down because of Nick Herbig. And with Nick Herbig there, you can flop him on either side. You can move Alex Highsmith around if you need to. And honestly, I'd say the play of Jack Sawyer also gives you a reliable fourth option. And that's why I think the Steelers need to keep all three guys right now. I know that there's this temptation to go trade for a wide receiver, for another playmaker, for something else. I don't think that that's the move right now. I think the Steelers could make a move like that. And listen, I'm not saying that Omar Khan won't make this move because Omar Khan's done a lot of not so predictable things in his early time with the Steelers, and that's kind of what he wants to do to make his name early in his career, but early in his GM career because he's also been around the Steelers for like 20 years. But when I look at the Steelers as they're constructed right now, this defense is based on getting to the quarterback. What they've done the last 2 weeks as far as their improvement is their ability to get to the quarterback. And yes, you're going to say, well, Alex Highsmith hasn't been there the last 2 weeks, so why do you need him? You need him because what if Nick Herbig goes down, or what if TJ Watt goes down? Then you're going to be dealing with either one of those players with Jack Sawyer and DeMarvin Leal as your only edge rushing options, and that would take your top pass rush unit, your outside linebackers, going from being an asset in the pass rush to maybe a question mark or worse. And that's what this team cannot afford to happen right now. They need all three of these guys healthy, along with the younger guys that are backups. And I guess DeMarvin Leal is not younger because he's in his fourth year, but you get my point. Along with the guys that are bona fide backups, but having three guys that are starter caliber outside linebackers is a much bigger asset to this team than just going and getting a rental wide receiver for a year, especially because this is Nick Herbig's third year. He still has another year under contract. It would not shock me if the Steelers found a way to keep him and maybe you moved on Alex Highsmith later if you really like the rise of Nick Herbig and you say, hey, he's younger, we can pay him and not have to pay him a whole lot. And we can move him outside. That's fine later, but not right now. Remember the was the 2023 season, 2 seasons ago, when they did make it to the playoffs and it seemed like everything was trending upwards. They were on that win streak. And then what happened? TJ Watt got injured, and that put a big snag in the defense. And the Steelers and their defense were competitive in the playoffs against the superstar powered Bills with Josh Allen. They only lost by 14. They were down by 7 in the fourth quarter without TJ Watt. Now you have that comparable plate replacement ready, not just for him, but for Alex Highsmith. And also, when all three are healthy, I think that is a level of pass rushing ability that is going to really boost this defense in a big way, because TJ Watt, obviously, I think the thing is we've all talked about moving TJ Watt around. The move might be to not move him around and just make him such a force on his side where he's so comfortable that you're so worried about him, you're forgetting everyone else that's moving around. I broke down Nick Herbig's intentional grounding play, yesterday when we talked about it with Alan Saunders. But like you saw, TJ Watt still had a huge impact on the play. Even when he lined up in his normal spot, he just freed up Cam Hayward and Nick Herbig to go 2-on-2 with two Vikings linemen, and they were able to cross him up and get after him. And you saw that against the Patriots. And I think what you're seeing right now is the Steelers are figuring out the ways that they want to free up TJ Watt without having to move him around too much. And that way you can get Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith on the move, make them the dangerous pass rushers that move around, and TJ Watt still just in his place, being elite in what he does. And he's been elite the last 2 games in his performance. I don't think you want to break that up right now, especially with the defensive chemistry that's starting to build. If you can get healthy, if Jalen Ramsey can come back healthy, if the linebackers can stay healthy, Derek Harmon can stay healthy, and Cam Hayward's still there, I really think, and Joey Porter Jr. comes back, of course, that's another big one. I really think that's what can make this defense truly elite in the coming months here in the NFL. Because 3-1. I thought they'd be 2-2. They're outperforming where I thought they'd be right now, and that's good. But we also know that they need to play their best later in the year, and I don't think they've played close to their best. I think they've been approaching it, but I think that they still have a bit to climb on both sides of the ball, but in ways that are very attainable. Not in the sense that, oh man, they'll never be as good as those teams. No, I think that this Steelers team, if they continue to climb, if the O-line continues to build, and we'll talk about them later in this show, I think they can get there. But they can't get there if this outside linebacker group isn't whole. And this is going to be the bye weeks this week, and the bye week does come at a good time for the Steelers. But they cannot go 13 weeks and just expect all your outside linebackers to be healthy all 13 weeks the rest of the way. You want to have backup plans, and not just backup plans as far as a guy that can fill in, but backup plans as far as a guy that can fill in and be a star player for your defense. And right now, Nick Herbig's being that star player. But Alex Highsmith, when he's there, he can also be that star player. And that's what you want to have with that rotation in what's still going to be the strongest part of your team, your defense. And the stronger part of that defense is the pass rush. That's why I think that's huge and why that's coming along. Now, there's still the Calvin Austin injury to be concerned about. We'll talk about the impact of that and what the Steelers have to do moving forward at the wide receiver position and on offense, especially at the playmaker position, if Calvin Austin does miss considerable time. That's next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. Be right back. But first, I remind you this show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda craft cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery, with all-wheel drive standard and every crossover SUV. You can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, breaking things down. Let's go over some things on the offensive side of the ball. So, as we know, the Steelers did suffer an unfortunate injury with Calvin Austin. It doesn't appear season ending. So, it's a shoulder injury. He was reported to be in a sling. But one thing that got reported by my colleague Jerry Dulac at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette was that Calvin Austin's shoulder injury was going to make him miss at least several games, quote unquote. And he also said Jalen Ramsey's hamstring could also mean several games. So we'll see how that plays out. And we also saw how Joey Porter Jr. has now sat out 3 games with a hamstring injury. And Jalen Ramsey, I think that with I think the assumption is that Joey Porter is going to be able to return, and it's unfortunate to not have Ramsey, but I think that's going to be its own challenge. We'll cover that later. But Calvin Austin, I think Calvin Austin has been the wide receiver 2 that a lot of people were kind of hoping he would be so far this season. Now, he hasn't gotten a whole bunch of yards and playmaking ability, but like I said in the offseason, wide receiver 2 in this Steelers team is not going to be like, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase with DK Metcalf. Wide receiver 2 in this offense, I think, is going to be that guy that makes that spurt play in the moment and makes some tough plays here and there, but ultimately is not your stat maker in this offense. It's going to be DK Metcalf, your number 1 wide receiver. They'll get it to the tight ends, they'll get it to the running backs, and wide receiver 2 will kind of be a float around option for if Aaron Rodgers sees them. It's also why I said that if they go get a wide receiver 2, you'll probably never see Calvin Austin, because look at right now, you're not seeing Scotty Miller or Rowan Wilson get many chances either. But I do think that with Calvin Austin being injured, Omar Khan's probably hitting the phones. He's probably making some calls, probably looking up some things. But I don't think that he's doing so in a way that's like, hey, I'm willing to do anything here. I want Alex Highsmith, want this guy, want that guy. I don't think it's like that. I also don't think he's going to necessarily trade away Pat Freiermuth, even though he hasn't been getting used a lot so far. Because I think Pat Freiermuth can be part of the solution already if they just get him the ball more as a tight end. I don't think he's running bad routes. I think that he's there. It just hasn't gotten the ball to him. We talked about that at the end of the show yesterday with Alan Saunders. But I do think the Steelers need to be concerned about that second wide receiver position if Calvin Austin's out for extended time and they don't feel like Roman Wilson's ready to step up. Because I do have to admit, Roman Wilson's played a decent amount of snaps. I've seen him make some good blocks, and I've seen him even run some decent routes. He's been open a few times, but they haven't gotten him the ball, and I do wonder if that's a bad sign for his development, if there's something that he's not doing in his details that Aaron Rodgers just isn't liking. I'm not saying that there is, but I am saying it does make me wonder what's going on there. Now, again, the Steelers want to be a balanced attack where they're running the ball, they're checking the ball to their running backs, they're protecting the ball, but they're also letting Aaron Rodgers take his shots when he wants to. And I think that's part of why, again, it's going to be tough to get everybody the ball each game. And I mean, heck, there's been 2 games now where I think Jaylen Warren's been the leading receiver for the Steelers. But I still think that this could be a chance for Roman Wilson to show what he has. He's a speedster. He's quick. I think he does have good hands. And he could still be that guy that gets out on defenses. I also don't think the Steelers have used, or at least Aaron Rodgers hasn't used, a lot of the shallow cross passes that I really think this offense does eventually set up. Now, part of that, I think, is because they're still developing their run game. And last week might be a really good sign for this moving forward. And again, we'll address the offensive line more in the next segment. But one thing I saw a lot in training camp was shallow crosses as a way of stretching a team horizontally. And if Aaron Rodgers can get time and the linebackers are not just sitting on them and passing them off and ready for them, it is really tough to cover Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson on shallow crosses because of their straight up speed. Now, people often think about speed as far as vertical routes. Get upfield, you get behind the safety, and that's a touchdown. But horizontal speed is also dangerous. Heck, you kind of saw that with the slant that DK Metcalf had, right? But imagine a shallow cross where you're worried about DK Metcalf running a slant or a go, and you're worried about Pat Freiermuth or Darnell Washington up the seam or Jonnu Smith here. And then all of a sudden, Calvin Austin gets your third best cornerback or a linebacker on him, and he's running just a short route that's over the middle. And if he can just get in front of that guy and Aaron Rodgers gets him the ball, there aren't many players who are going to have the acceleration to get up and get going and catch Calvin Austin while he's in full stride after he catches that pass. And the same thing I think would go for Roman Wilson, because he also ran a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. Those guys are fast, and I think that that's something that's going to be unlocked in this offense. But again, I think they're still figuring things out. I think they started to figure out the run game a little bit Sunday against the Vikings. They were able to move the ball pretty consistently on the ground, and that's a very good sign, I think, for the O-line. Again, we'll talk about that more of that in a bit. But I think that with what they're putting together, there's different elements of this offense that are growing, and that's part of the patience that we've said is going to have to come with this season. Like we talked about how with the defense, this is a new defense, despite this being the same defensive coordinator. The Steelers are bringing a lot of different blitzes, different looks, different coverage disguises, and that they're putting the onus on different positions than they normally would to make certain plays. And that's where I think things are quite a bit different for Terrell Austin's defense. Similarly, on offense, they're asking a lot more of Aaron Rodgers to do the heavy lifting in this offense. They're asking him to see things that they weren't asking of Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, would name a quarterback over the last 4 or 5 years since Ben Roethlisberger. And I think that's part of what's changing with this offense is that they're finding ways to get more out of more guys. So and they're trying to find ways to fit that in with Aaron Rodgers does. So I don't think the Steelers necessarily go get a guy unless they feel that down about Roman Wilson and they're that sure that Calvin Austin is going to be gone for an extended period of time. When I say go get a guy, I don't mean just sign somebody, because I do think they will sign somebody eventually just to keep an extra body on the roster. But I don't think they're going to make this big trade. Like a lot of people want the Steelers to trade for A.J. Brown. And look, A.J. Brown is a phenomenal talent. Him and DK Metcalf physically would just be insane on the Steelers roster. But I look at him complaining about targets on the Eagles or his lack of targets on the Eagles, and you think that's going to change much with Aaron Rodgers and the way this passing offense works, DK Metcalf's still going to be your primary guy. And if A.J. Brown's not getting his targets, if he gets the 3 targets that Calvin Austin gets a game, what's he going to do on the Steelers? Do you think the Steelers want that drama? I don't think so. I think that there could be a move for wide receiver still made, and I'm not sure what it would take to get that wide receiver, but I don't think it's of an A.J. Brown type caliber. I still think it would be close to like a Romeo Doubs, and with the Packers' injuries at wide receiver, I'm not sure that they would want to do that, but I think it would be a player of that caliber where they can be that number 2 wide receiver, but they're not a pure number 1 wide receiver, just also being slotted in at number 2, the way that some people want the Steelers to do, like with Tyreek Hill, who now isn't an option because he looks like he's done for the season with his I think he has a dislocated knee. And then A.J. Brown also, just because I don't think that that's the right fit the Steelers should be going for right now. But I do think, again, the crux of this offense that they want to have is they want to control the line of scrimmage. They want to have a balanced attack so that you can't predictably just charge down and stop the run, but you also can't just sit back and stop the pass. And I think that they started to achieve that Sunday against the Vikings when you saw Aaron Rodgers be efficient and the run game be efficient. But a big part of that was the improvement of the offensive line. I want to talk about what things that I saw in the offensive line that improved and why I do think there's some good signs moving forward for this group that's been much maligned early in this part of the season because of their start. We'll talk about that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel wants to make sure that you're ready for all the action with this can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you want to bet, player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet and get your chance at a $300 in bonus bets to use all across the FanDuel app. We're also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you could end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life into one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop and phone. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Your Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted subscriptions that I wasn't even using. Canceling those saved me money every month. Monarch is simple to use. Your finances with your partner, your spending budgets, set all your goals, and go after them. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year only at Monarch Money. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here today. I want to point out something that I think Steelers fans might not realize, but the offensive line is playing better together in a few respects. One, you're seeing them win more of their one-on-ones, which is something that always has to happen. They have to play together, but they also have to win across the board. But I think you're starting to also see their chemistry come into place when it comes to the run game. The timing of the combination block, the chip blocks, the timing of the poles in the right spaces. And I think it's a good sign that this group could start to figure some things out as they continue to go along the season, which was what we said was arguably the biggest thing that needed to happen this year. Yes, defense needs to be great. Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf need to connect, but this offensive line must coalesce. They must become a much better unit by the end of this season so that they can be a force for this team moving forward. They need to be a new nucleus that is dependable for this team. As I talked about, I gave Broderick Jones 2 stars, and that might be the highest grade I've ever given him in his time with the Steelers and doing Stars and Skulls here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. And I think he earned it. He looked great in the run game. He looked like a force there. He was shutting down pass rushers. And I think him doing that just before the bye, he gets a chance to get some rest, look at his tape a little bit more. It's perfect timing because guess who comes up after the bye? Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. And if Broderick Jones has a good game against Myles Garrett, it's going to send up a lot of green flags for the Steelers saying, like, oh boy, we may have figured some things out here, which is what I was saying. Hey, guys, we got to be patient. I know a lot of people have talked about firing Pat Meyer. And hey, even I thought that they could have let Pat Meyer go at the end of last season. But I was also like, you know what? This offensive line hasn't had time to grow yet. Broderick Jones hasn't been in his natural position. Troy Faltano hasn't played yet. Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick were rookies. Let's give this offensive line time to work. And those first few weeks, people were saying, "Boo! These guys stink. They're never going to grow. They're just going to be the same." And I was like, "Hey guys, remember." They're young. They're developing. Broderick Jones still extremely young in his career, despite just being a third-year player. He came into the NFL very young. Him and Zach Frazier still young. Troy Faltano, and just that was his 4th start and in his career. Give these guys some time to develop, and I think you're starting to see it. Troy Faltano didn't have his best game, but I also think he didn't have a bad game on Sunday. And I think you're starting to see him settle into what he wants to expect as well. And as they're all settling into their own things, they're starting to play together better. And that's going to be a big thing for this run game because, as much respect as I have for Kenneth Gainwell and the way that he ran in this game, Kenneth Gainwell, is not Barry Sanders or Adrian Peterson or LaDainian Tomlinson or, guys that could make plays on their own even when the offensive line busts a play and just consistently be great. But even the better running backs like Le'Veon Bell wouldn't have been Le'Veon Bell for the Steelers of his time in 2010s without Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, and especially Marcus Gilbert too. I think he's very much underrated for his time with the Steelers. He would not have been the running back that he was for the Steelers if it wasn't for that offensive line. And I think the same thing's going to go for most running backs, unless they're like, Saquon Barkley. And even Saquon Barkley needs blocking. But I look at the potential for the Steelers offense, and I think that it gets so much higher if this offensive line continues to play better. I think Zach Frazier, the biggest thing about Zach Frazier, I do think he needs to get those snaps up. There's a lot of them that are really low, and I don't understand what's going on there. That's a very standard thing to get done, but it's also not been the killer point for the Steelers just yet. It could be if it happens in a really bad spot that crushes drives in some key games. But his blocking, his pass protection, his run blocking, I think it's been pretty solid. There have been some mental gaps. Again, Isaac Seumalo just kind of miscommunicated on a twist. The first play of the game where they gave up the sack was one of those simulated pressures that Brian Flores does, where he lines up a lot of guys. It's like an Okie blitz where you got to guess where that's coming from. They just guessed wrong. But largely, they've been doing much better in pass protection the past few weeks. They allowed no sacks against the Patriots, who were leading the NFL in sacks going into that game. And then they allowed 2 sacks to the Vikings. And yes, some of it is the Steelers are getting the ball off quick, but you're also seeing Aaron Rodgers start to hold on to the ball a little bit more and look for DK Metcalf on some of those deeper balls. And I think that's a product of this offensive line playing better. And they're still not an elite unit. I still think that they're working their way to being above average unit. And I still think that that's where they're going to end up this year. I don't think that they're going to end up being the 2010 Steelers offensive line in its prime by the end of this season. I think that that's something that could be a year or 2 away. But if they can get to the point of being an above average unit, I think people underestimate the impact that could have on this Steelers team, because if they're being an above average unit, they're regularly creating space in the run game. They're protecting Aaron Rodgers so that he doesn't have to get hit as much as he did in the first couple of weeks. And they're creating opportunities for this offense. And that's something that the Steelers, with Kenny Pickett, with Mitch Trubisky, with Mason Rudolph, with anybody, with all the other quarterbacks, they have not had that good of an offensive line, even with old man Ben Roethlisberger when he was in his last couple of years. I think that the last time the Steelers had a decent offensive line was 2020, back when Pouncey and DeCastro's last season together. Since then, it has been trying to scrape together anything possible. But now you're starting to see guys develop. Broderick Jones is developing. Troy Fautanu is developing. Zach Frazier's developing. And I'll also say Mason McCormick's developing, because I also gave him a 2-star grade for his performance on Sunday. Mason McCormick is looking like the run blocking mauler that they drafted him to be in the 4th round. And he's also not giving up much in pass protection right now. And so I think if you got those 4 young guys, and Sam Allou's your vet, and maybe you draft a guy next year in the 3rd or 4th round to be another young guy to mix in with this crew, you could have that next nucleus that you've been looking for the Steelers offensive line. And that kind of a nucleus in the O-line can last you 5, 8 good years and set the window for maybe you find that franchise quarterback. Now they got an offensive line that protects them, a run game that they can trust, and everything else is looking good. And I think that's the key for the Steelers right now, to try to be able to get this offensive line together. And I think they're coming together. And I think Pat Meyer deserves credit for the progress there. Now, it's still a long way to go. Still not saying Pat Meyer has done the job and they're going to be this above average unit all year. But I do think you're seeing the signs from Broderick Jones, Mason McCormick. They're pulling and hitting in space. They're pulling and hitting up in the hole. You saw them move people at the line of scrimmage in tight spaces. They did the Connor Hayward tush push. They're figuring things out. And if they do figure things out, this Steelers team gets a lot better down the stretch. And it's that kind of Steelers play in the offensive line that can help you win more of those December and January games. Because when you're on the road and it's getting cold, oftentimes the best thing to do is to be able to run the football. And the Steelers, even with Najee Harris, were not able to consistently do that because their offensive line play have been off. That continues. I think there's some really good signs for the Steelers offense moving forward. We'll talk more about that when we get inside the facility later this week on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for tuning in here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our Monday through Friday episodes. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette by going to post-gazette.com and follow me on social media, wherever you get social media, at Carter Critiques, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, wherever you get it. I'm there at Carter Critiques. We'll see you again when I'm back in Pittsburgh here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.